Hey, 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 it's me, your friend Ellen, back in the kitchen, back ready to make bread for you. Sorry it's been a while. Life gets in the way sometimes. Nothing is wrong, nobody is sick, nothing tragic, just busy life stuff. Doctor's appointments and visiting people and whatever, but everything's good. Today I'm going to make olive bread, and I would have never even considered making olive bread, but my daddy requested it, and a couple of my fans or my groupies, whoever, some of you requested olive bread, so I am making olive bread, which is pretty funny because I will not touch it with a 10-foot pole. I don't eat olives. Gross, disgusting, and the dough smells vile to me. But as it turns out, even though I don't like it, my dad and my husband and my friend who lives down the street and my brother, all of my guinea pigs absolutely love it. So I'm making it for you, and you can enjoy it if you're not like me and you like olives. Before we begin, I want to show you how to find the recipe. Hopefully you can find it, and I want you to let me know if this is a problem for you. But at least on my iPad or on my phone, here's the video, and this is just a screenshot so that it's not going to move, but below the right corner, right across from the title, there's a teeny little hard to find down arrow. And if you click that, the full recipe is in the description of the video. So you should always be able to find the full recipe. If you are having trouble with finding the recipe, all you need to do is message me, and I will send you the text of the recipe. Easy for me. I just have it on my phone in my notes app, and I copy and paste lickety-split. It's no big deal. So if you have trouble getting that recipe, let me know, because I don't go through the recipe as far as the amounts in my video. It takes too long, and I don't have the patience to do all that titling. I'm not that video techie, so I don't do that. So please let me know. And also, there are comments, a comment section. I love your comments. I love them to be positive. I like them less if they're negative, and nobody really sends me negative comments. But if you have a constructive thing to say, be nice and tell me, Ellen, I really wish you would do this instead, or something like that. I can't improve it if you don't tell me if something is wrong. So please, please give me a comment. This recipe looks good. Ooh, I want to make this. Anything like that. Or, yeah, I don't like olives either. You can say that too. I won't blame you a bit, because to me they're vile. And I'm going to stick my iPad out of the way. I've already pre-measured my ingredients. I am using just your basic black olives. You could choose anything you want. Now, I will tell you that first I used kalamata olives. I'm going to get the jar out of the fridge to show you. If it's not too far back, here it is. My dad brought these over, and I did use these. And if you're a big fan of kalamata olives instead, you may certainly use this in the recipe. So I did use these first, and my dad and my husband and my friend down the street and my brother liked it. But as it turns out, they like the black olive one more. So that's what I'm doing for you today. There are other olives in the world. Feel free to experiment. You do maybe have to be a little careful with the sodium content and possibly adjust your salt that you put in the recipe if they're a lot more salty or a lot less salty. But that would be the only major difference. So this is going to be an olive bread that also contains rosemary, thyme, and garlic. They all kind of go together, I suppose, from what I hear. So I actually drained those black olives, and this is the juice. I don't know that this juice is a brine. I think it's just a juice. When I made the kalamata olives, I think they are more in a brine solution, and I used that just to give a little flavor boost. So I'm using some of the juice that I drained from the olives, and then the rest of the liquid is just my good old tap water. Now remember, if you don't have a machine like I do that preheats your ingredients, you're going to need to warm your liquids. I don't. My machine has a rest or a preheat cycle for about 18 to 20 minutes at the very beginning, and it warms my ingredients. So I can just put ingredients in straight from the fridge. But if yours doesn't do that, you must warm your ingredients. So I put in my juice or from the olives or the brine, whichever, and water, and I have some olive oil going in there, of course. And I have two kinds of olive oil in my house. I have the Costco Kirkland big jar, but I also have this, what I hear is better from my dad, maybe a nicer flavor. So I am using the better olive oil because it will help flavor the bread maybe a little bit nicer. All right. By the way, I have a little secret when I put oil in because I'm so lazy. I don't want to get out a spatula. If it calls for 22 grams like my recipe does, I put in about 25. So if there's a little residual left over, it's okay. And also I've never had problems if I added more fat. So there you go. I often double the butter in recipes, put more oil. I've never had it ruin a recipe. So the next ingredients are my flours. And I have two kinds going in this recipe. I have rye flour. I buy the Food to Live rye flour that I get on Amazon. You can choose your rye flour, whatever you want. And I also have bread flour. Always I use King Arthur bread flour. And I'm going to just put them together. I don't normally do this, but I have a reason, which I'm going to tell you about right now. I am also using dried thyme and dried rosemary. And I find that when I'm using dried herbs, they distribute better if I mix them into the flour first. So that's why I combined my flours together and put the dried herbs in, and I'm just going to give it a little mix up. Could have done it with my fingers, spoon, fork, spatula, elbow. I don't know. But I made a couple of my herbs de Provence breads and found that my herbs didn't distribute well, and clumps of them, and you don't want that. So I just mix them in from now on. It doesn't seem to hurt anything. So I am plopping in now my flour and herb mixture. Out. Okay. So now I can move this down a bit to make it easier for my hubby videographer. So my next ingredients are sugar and salt. I have brown sugar. If you don't want to use brown sugar, we use white sugar. I don't know. This is what I use in my rye bread, and I kind of tweaked this recipe from my rye bread recipe. So this is what I use. Brown sugar and salt. Before I do anything else, I want to go down my list of ingredients. The brine or the juice, the water, olive oil, rye flour, bread flour, brown sugar, salt, dried thyme, dried rosemary, and finally, my yeast. Make a little well in the middle, pop my yeast in. And I know you wonder, well, what about the olives? Coming up. So what I'm going to do is walk over to my bread machine after we turn off the video. I'm going to set this for dough cycle. If you want to make it all the way in your bread machine, go right ahead. I almost never do that, but sometimes I do. But I'm going to make it dough cycle. So we're going to turn off the video camera. I'm going to start the bread machine, but then I'll be right back with you because I'm going to show you how to prep the olives and what I do with the garlic. Here come the yucky olives. So at first I weighed out and I had 140 grams of olives. But when I weighed out the 140 grams of black olives, it was literally all but 5 of the can of olives. So I thought, oh boy, well, I'm just going to put them all in. So this is a 6-ounce can. So 6 ounces. And I just weighed the olives without the juice in them, and they weighed 166.6 grams. So that's what I'll put in the recipe, but I'll also add 6 ounce can, drained. Okay, but make sure you save that juice for your liquid. So I'm just slicing them in 2 or 3 slices. And wouldn't it be a fun recipe, fun video, if I made you watch me slice all of these olives? Who wants to watch me slice all of these olives? Nobody does. So we're going to turn off the video camera, and I'll be back with you when I do the garlic. So my husband just said to me that you are all screaming at me saying, why don't you just buy sliced olives? And the answer is, I don't really think about olives because I don't eat them. And my husband, it's his fault, bought these cans of olives at Costco, and they're whole because he likes to, and so does my dad, pop them in his mouth. But you could, of course, buy sliced olives and not do what I'm doing. And my husband also asked, why don't you just put them in a cutting board, or I have one of those chopping bowls with a mezzaluna, and I could just go and chop them up fast. Totally up to you. But I am already slicing them, so I will continue toiling away at the cutting board. But yes, you can certainly use sliced olives. All my olives are sliced. And by the way, they do get chopped up in the bread, so if you just want to chop them up, it's your bread. I don't know. I may never slice them again after the husband had to put his 2 cents in. So now I'm going to chop up the garlic. So how I do it is I cut off the ends like that. It's my little trash bowl. And sometimes I use a knife to smash, but this is a kind of a nicer knife. Oh, you know, this just reminds me of something. Who remembers the movie Crocodile Dundee? He gets out and he goes, no, that's a knife. I always think about that. So anyway, this is one of my better knives. So I kind of like to, we don't put it in the dishwasher, and I kind of treat it nice. So I found that the bench scraper is really nice for doing the pound. So hold your ears. And then I just grab the peel. It comes off very, very easily. And I'm ready for the next one. Just cut off that end. Hold your ears. I just think that this is safer. There's more surface area for your fist. So that's why I do it. So another smash. Makes pretty fast work. And I know that people have all kinds of doodads for peeling garlic, those things that roll. I don't know. I've had other things. I just kind of like this way. What can I tell you? Plus, you know, gets out your aggressions, right? Almost done. Voila. Okay. Get rid of that. And then I'm just going to mince my garlic. You all know how to do this. And I'm not a chef. I don't have like knife skills. I actually did take a knife skills class once, but it was so many years ago that I've pretty much forgotten everything, except in certain circumstances you hold it down here and not up here. And this you have more control. So, and just about done chopping the garlic, and then I'm going to saute it in olive oil. So I'm going to go turn on that pot or that pan to heat up, and we'll be back in just a second. I've minced the garlic up. Oh, there's a little bigger piece. Oh, I guess it's just not all the way chopped. And there's a really big piece. How'd I miss that? All right. So I have some olive oil in this little skillet. And you never want to saute garlic for a very long time. Like when you make spaghetti sauce, you put your onions in first, and then you put your garlic in just as the onions are getting done. You do not want to do this for a very long time. Just a couple of minutes. Now, could you just use raw garlic? You betcha. Could you leave out the garlic if you don't like garlic? Sure. Could you use a garlic press and turn it into that liquidy substance and put it in with your wet ingredients? You could do that too. So it's your bread. This is my bread. You can take my basic recipe and, come on, bigger piece, that's okay. So I'm just going to saute it just for a couple of minutes in some olive oil. Oh, I wanted to line that bowl with a little paper towel because I don't want it to be super wet with the oil. So I'm starting to smell it. See little brown bits? That's it. That's all I'm doing. You can put it in raw. You could do what I did. Cut it bigger, cut it smaller, leave it out. Have a good time. This should be fun. Don't stress yourself out. All right, putting that down. And here we go. So I'm just blotting it with the paper towel. And like that. And I'm going to get a little bowl. I guess I can use this because it's here. It's my Mandalorian Grogu bowl. Yes, I am a Star Wars nerd. I'm going to put the olives in here. I'm going to put the garlic in here. Get off, get off, get off, get off, get off, get off, get off. Okay. And I have a bit of garlic. And I'm just going to mix it up a bit. And let me rinse my fingers off. And then, just like when we add raisins to cinnamon raisin bread and we put a little flour in so they are less sticky, I'm going to put a little flour in there. Not a lot. You saw what I did. And I'm going to just lightly, and I may need a little more, but we'll see what it looks like. Because the olives and garlic are pretty wet, I'm going to add a little more. Look, I'm going to do this left-handed. Look at that. Am I talented or what? Okay. So I may have ended up with about a tablespoonful. And this is all ready to go at the add beep. When my machine beeps, excuse me, after maybe, I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes of kneading. So we're going to turn off the camera for now, but I will update you to see if my dough is too wet or too dry. Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera when I'm washing my hands. And we'll be adjusting. I want you to always remember, and I know I've said this in other videos, but if you've never seen a video with me before, when you get a recipe for yeast bread and it calls for a certain amount of flour and a certain amount of liquid, please always know that those are estimates, close estimates, but they are still estimates. You always have to be prepared to adjust. If the dough is too dry, you need to add a tiny little splash of liquid. If the dough is too dry, too wet, you need to be prepared to add a little, maybe a tablespoon of flour, and then let it knead some more, because you're looking for a smooth dough ball that is tacky but not sticky. So if you touch it with your finger and you have dough all over your finger, you need to add a little bit of flour. If there's dough under the paddle or paddles, if they're spinning and there's dough underneath, your dough is definitely too wet. Add a little bit of flour, let it knead for a minute or two, go back, look at it again. If you have an Apple Watch or some kind of a timer, or just even an egg timer that you carry with you, make sure you set timers. I don't know about you, but I will always forget. So I set 10 timers on my watch and my phone constantly, especially when I'm baking, all day long. Timers are your friend. So you have to be prepared. I usually have a little measuring cup with some extra liquid next to the bread machine, as well as I haven't washed my flour bowl yet. So I will put a little bit of flour in there, not a lot. And I'll have them nearby so that when I check 5 minutes in a kneading, if my dough is too wet, I'll add more liquid. Too wet, I'll add more flour. I always say it wrong. Or too dry, I'll add more liquid. And it's a fine line. Sometimes you can add like one tiny little tablespoon of liquid and it's perfect. That's all it needs. Or one tiny tablespoon of flour and it's perfect. That's all you need. So don't add a lot at once or you're going to really mess it up. Key is to watch that dough. Okay, we'll be back. So the dough's been kneading for 5 minutes. My timer just went off. And I'm going to check it out. There's the tiniest bit of dough on my finger, but it's definitely, I would say tacky, but not sticky. I don't think it's too wet or too dry. I think it's absolutely perfect. So I'm going to leave it alone to do its thing and wait for the ad beep. And then now I can get rid of this. And I won't use that flour right now, but I'm going to leave it for putting on my counter. I'm going to tell you, but I'm going to turn this off and then switch. So now it's just me in the kitchen and doing selfie mode. Is like the eyes don't go to the right place. I'm sorry about that. I don't know how to look. Anyway, last night I thought it had been 5 minutes in a kneading, and I guess it wasn't. But I looked and it looks so dry. So I added some liquid, and then I checked again in a couple of minutes, and it was too wet. I'm like, And I went through this mad scientist thing. Lesson learned. Wait the 5 minutes, because if it hasn't finished kind of putting it together, doing its thing, you're going to get an inaccurate reading. So don't look at 1 minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Wait the full 5 minutes after it starts kneading, or you're going to be like me where you're adding liquid and, oh crap, it's too wet, adding solid, oh crap, it's too dry. Don't do that. See, if I had just let it go, because I just made this exact recipe last night. If I had just let it go, I would have found out it was probably going to be perfect. Just checking one more time a couple minutes later. Look at that. It is a perfectly wonderful smooth dough ball. And I use this time when it's kneading, when I'm waiting for the ad beep so I can put in my olives and garlic. I use this time to sort of get the kitchen cleaned up in between. My ad beep just went off, started to go off, and I guess I don't know why it turned off already, but I'm adding my olive and garlic mixture very gradually, about a third at a time. So I'm preparing my loaf pan, even though I have about an hour. This loaf pan, and you don't have to buy expensive loaf pans, but this loaf pan is a Williams-Sonoma Gold Touch loaf pan. I'm only telling you because I get asked all the time. And what I have done, I'm sorry for the crinklies, I use a canola oil spray, never ever use PAM. There's some kind of chemical in PAM that will wreck these and a lot of other nonstick surfaces. I don't know what it is, but I was told not to use PAM. So we just use this we get at Costco. canola oil spray. You can always just oil it with a brush or whatever. And then what I do is I spray it, but then I take a sheet of parchment, and I don't know how I'm going to do this with one hand. Anyway, I push it in and just try to get it in there. Not going to go all the way up the sides, as you can see, but the parchment makes the bread super easy to just lift out and get on the cooling rack. Sorry for the bad video on this. So now I'm all set to go for when my dough is ready. I have my little bowl of flour that I can sprinkle on the counter if the dough feels a little sticky, and the olives are kind of wet, so they do make it a little bit sticky. Not a lot, but a little bit. And so I'm all prepared. I have my loaf pan, I have my flour, and when the dough is about ready to come out, I will, sprinkle some dough and sprinkle some flour. By the way, unless your dough is insanely sticky, do not put a lot of flour. Look how little flour this is. You can always add more if your dough is super sticky, which it shouldn't be. But if it is, and there are some that are, especially if they have honey in them, you don't want to use a ton of flour because you really don't want to add flour to the dough. You're just making it so it doesn't stick and you can handle it. So don't over flour your surface. All right, that's it for now. My dough is rising. It's time to check to make sure things are rising. Yep, it's definitely bigger than it was before. All right then, I'll see you when the dough is done. So last night I made this identical bread. The dough, as I talked about earlier, looked a little dry. I added water, then it looked a little wet, and I added flour, but it turned out perfect. And the dough came pretty much clean out of the bread pan. Last night I don't know if it rained or just was a heavy mist or sprinkled, but it's definitely more humid today. And when I took this out, it's fine, it rose, it looks good, but a lot more gooey stuff was left in the bread pan. Humidity makes a huge difference, just letting you know. As I showed you earlier, I've prepped my bread pan already, and people always ask me, what bread pan am I using? I already told you earlier it's a Williams-Sonoma Gold Touch, but I think I forgot to tell you that it's 10 inches long, 5 inches wide, 3 inches deep. You can use any 2-pound bread pan. This is actually sold as a 1.5-pound bread pan. I like a big mushroom top, a big round loaf. If you want to make it in a 3-pound pan so you have a longer, shallower loaf, you can do that. It's a personal choice. We're sticking a little bit. Let me just sprinkle a little more flour. It's just slightly stickier, I think, because of the humidity. So it is time to, and I don't do a lot. I just kind of shape it like this. I don't roll it out or knead it or do anything. I just shape it. And then I can move it over here because my husband's arm isn't long enough. the long arm of the not law but videographer. And I just have a habit of pressing it into the bread pan. I don't know. I just think it comes out a little prettier when I do that. All right. Public service announcement while I get all this goo off my hands before I go stick this in the slightly warm oven to rise. Wash your hands so you don't want to touch your oven with sticky hands. Okay. So I'm just going to move this over here, and we're going to go over to my oven, and I bake the bigger loaves with the rack one lower than the center. What I'm going to do is use my oven to do the final rise on my bread. When you use dough course, you have to shape your bread and let it rise one last time before you bake it. My oven is old enough that it doesn't have a proof setting. If you have a proof setting, it should proof at around 85 degrees, which is perfect. And what you can do is just turn on proof, set your timer for 40 or 45 minutes, and leave your dough in there, take it out, heat your oven up, do your egg wash or whatever you want to do, and bake it. I don't have a proof setting, so this is what my mother taught me when I was growing up, and she never made bread, but we made yeast dough coffee cake, so same principle. I turn on my oven to its lowest temperature that it goes. Mine only goes down to 170. I hit start and set a timer for 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Okay, camera on me. If you've seen my videos before and you know what's coming, fast forward a little. Sorry about the repeat, but some people are watching one of my videos for the first time. You do not leave your oven on for more than the 1 minute. That's why you must set a timer. You might remember, but you probably won't. You don't want it to heat for more than a minute. It will be too hot and it will kill your yeast and it will ruin your bread. So 1 minute just makes it about 85 degrees. I really should put a thermometer in there and check that out. But anyway, you just want it slightly warm, and it should feel as if you walk from your cool house and you open the door in the summer, go outside, and it's pretty warm out here, like about 85, 83, 84, 85 degrees. So watch this. My timer for 1 minute is over. I turn off the timer and I turn off the oven. I have only used 1 minute of electricity, just 1 minute of our precious expensive electricity to proof my bread. Some people just turn their oven light on, and maybe that keeps it warm, but why would you want to leave your oven light on for 45 minutes? You're using your light bulb, you're using electricity. You can do that if you want to. Some people put their dough into rise in a microwave and they heat a glass of water for a minute or something and then leave it in there. You can do that if you want. Again, you've used a little more electricity than 1 minute. So it's just my way. You do it your way, I'll do it my way, but this is what works for me. I'm just gonna put this in here. And I'm gonna set my timer for 40 minutes. And it really needs to rise about 45 minutes. So what I do is I take it out at the 40-minute mark and I turn on my oven to heat up, to bake. And then I also take that time to put on egg wash or sprinkle with seeds or do whatever needs to be done to the bread before it bakes. So I will show you what it looks like after it's fully risen and before I bake it. And we're back. So you can see that this rose a perfectly respectable amount. And when I made this before, I did not egg wash it, but I thought the crust looked a little dull, and I thought, well, I like the shiny golden brown that egg wash gives it. So my egg wash is 1 whole egg and a splash of water. I kind of don't measure the water. It's probably, I don't know, a teaspoon, a tablespoon. I'm not even sure if the water is super important. So, and you'll notice that I'm not brushing. I'm sort of mostly just patting because I don't want to deflate my dough. And that's one of the reasons I use the silicone brush. Now, the brush doesn't hold a lot, but it also doesn't have rough bristles that can deflate. So that is the method to my madness. I'm just gonna go over it again. And when I made this last night, and I've made it several times, I did not do this last night, but my husband mentioned he wishes it would be a little salty, but I really didn't feel like with 10 grams already in there, I could afford to put more salt in without affecting the rise. But there's no reason I can't sprinkle a little kosher salt on top. So I just don't like to dig my nails into my little salt cellars, all because even though my nails aren't long, it gets underneath and it's uncomfortable. So I just have a spoon in there, and this is, again, your personal opinion, okay? This is just your choice. As I keep saying today, it's your bread. Do what you like. If you're not a salt person, then don't put the kosher salt on top. If you don't want to put the egg wash on top, maybe there's an egg allergy in your family. Maybe you just don't want to waste a whole egg. I mean, it is kind of a waste, I agree. And, for one little bit, then don't do it. Totally up to you. You can just leave it, and it comes out with kind of a matte finish. And this egg wash should give it more of a golden brown and a little bit glossy, slightly glossy finish. So it's just a personal choice. You don't need to use the egg wash. You don't need to put on the kosher salt. It's your choice. And again, you can experiment with different kinds of olives. I made it twice with kalamata olives. And while everybody loved it, they said it was pretty strong. And so then I went to the black olives and tried it last night, and my guinea pigs liked it better. So black olives it is, but it's totally up to you. If you're using another kind of olive or any kind of olive, make sure that you have some kind of liquid that came with the olives to put in. I think it really probably boosts the flavor, although I couldn't tell you because I'm not eating it. I have my oven preheating to 375 degrees, and that's what I will bake it at. And I baked it last night, and it took about 40 minutes. But as always, you must invest not a lot of money in one of these instant read thermometers. It has a probe. You just pull it out, and I don't want to do it, but you stick it in from the side or in the top if you want, but you have to get into that center of the bread because that's where you need to make sure it's done. And you want it to be between 190 and 200 degrees Fahrenheit. And be careful because it's really easy to switch it to Celsius. And if you live in the UK or in Europe and you go by Celsius, then it's whatever 190 to 200 converts to. I'm sure you could Google that. So I'm just waiting for my oven. Oh, by the way, you have to close this tight or it doesn't reset. I'm just waiting for my oven to heat, and this should puff up even more and bake beautifully. I'll show you what it looks like when it comes out of the oven, and then I'll let it cool on a wire rack for 2 or 3 hours. Then we will cut into it, and I'll show you the crumb on the inside and how well the olives are distributed and everything like that. Well, here's one pretty olive bread. I'm really glad I did the egg wash because it gave it such a pretty color on top. And my husband smelled it and said, "It smells." How does it smell? It smells really good. He won't talk, I guess. Anyway, I'm going to show you why I put the parchment in. It just is easier. Instead of using mitts, picking up the whole pan and dumping it and then turning it upside down, because it comes out upside down, this just makes it so easy. Ta-da! And then I just kind of loosen the parchment and get it out of there. And there it is. And I'm going to let that cool. Turned out absolutely perfect. I'm going to let that cool for a couple of hours, and then we will cut it, and I'll show you the crumb inside. And here we have sliced open. I'm not going to taste it because you guys know I do not like olives, but there are olives all over the place. A lot of them on the top, but also a good amount inside as well. And you'll have to take my family's word for it that it is delicious. And there you have olive bread. Please like this video. Please comment. I answer all of your comments. And subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. And if you make this recipe, let me know how you like it. And you can make this in your bread machine. I would just make it on white or basic. Or you could probably make it on whole wheat too, because it has some rye flour in it. You can see which works best for you. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing how you like it.